Okay, so let's look at plant responses now. So all living things need to respond to a stimulus. So for this to happen, an organism has to be able to register what that stimulus is. So a stimulus is something that will produce a type of response in an organism. So we're going to look at this now within plants. So what is a stimulus? It's anything that causes an organism or its parts to react. So plants can respond to a stimulus that causes plant growth. So plant growth, what this is controlled by, it's controlled by internal and external factors. Now, please note that the external factors will influence what's the internal factors. So the external factors will influence what's happening within the plant. Okay, an external factor, temperature. This will have an effect on the enzyme reactions within the plant. So plants have a preferred temperature, depending, I suppose, where they are, but between 20 to 30 degrees. So we've covered enzymes. So we know that outside an enzyme's optimum temperature, it'll affect the rate of reaction. Light. Okay, outside our external factor, light. We need that inside the plant. The effect is for photosynthesis, to make food. Gravity, our external factor. Within the plant, it ensures that the roots grow down, and that's for anchorage and to absorb water. It'll also ensure that the shoots will grow up towards the sun. And another external factor is day length. So plants flower at the right time of the year. So your internal factors, they are what controls the plant. So auxins are examples of growth promoters. Now this year, in 2024, they asked what a growth promoter was, and they want it here. It's a chemical that causes an increase in growth of the plant. No, it's a growth regulator. We'll come back to that now. What's important is you must include the word chemical, okay? If we don't have the word chemical, we're not going to get the mark. So a growth promoter is a chemical that causes increased growth in a plant. So it's causing cell elongation. A growth inhibitor is a chemical that causes a reduction in the growth of a plant. And an example of this would be ethene. And ethene slows down mitosis. Now, a plant growth regulator. This was asked in the summer. A plant growth regulator is, and I've forgotten this word, so if you have the notes, please add it in. It is a chemical that controls the growth of the plant. You must include the word chemical there. So growth promoters, an example of growth promoter is IAA, indolylsic acid. What does it do? It increases the rate of growth. Where is it produced? It's produced at the meristematic tissue. The meristematic tissue is the root and shoot tips. So they're mainly transported through the xylem of the phloem. It's mainly transported through the xylem and the phloem, so through the vascular tissues. And it's transported by diffusion. So what it will do, it'll cause the stem and root to grow. It'll cause geotropism, phototropism, and fruit formation. So growth regulators, they are similar to animal hormones. So we need to know at least two ways in which these are similar. And that could be actually a question. So they can be similar in both that they are chemical. And a nice one I like is while they are produced in one place, they act in another place. Okay? They are transported through vascular systems, and they're slow acting and long lasting. Now they're my two favorites. I like, but you might like the other two, but you just need to know two. So auxins, they cause cell elongation. They can cause bending of the plant, growth of the plant. This is a tropism. So tropism is the growth of a response of a plant to a stimulus. So we need to know examples of tropisms. So phototropism. Tropism, the growth of the plant to a stimulus. Photo, it's a growth response to light. Chemiotropism, a growth response to chemicals. Thigmotropism, a growth response to touch. Geotropism, a growth response to gravity. Hydrotropism, a growth response of a plant to water. Now, tropisms are adapted for advantages. Sorry, I'll go there. So, yeah, tropisms are adapted advantages for plants to obtain the most favorable growing conditions. So, tropisms can be positive. So, when a plant grows towards a stimulus, and tropisms can be negative. And that's when a plant grows away from the stimulus. Now, let's look at each of these tropisms we've just mentioned. Phototropism is a response to light. Now, a positive phototropism is that more photosynthesis will take place. And I'm emphasizing the word more. If you don't mention more, we're not going to get the mark. So if you just mention photosynthesis, we're not getting the mark. So more light is another answer here. So you can get more light to make more food. The more food is more photosynthesis. A negative response, of phototropism is that it'll anchor the plant, it'll get more water and more minerals. Geotropism is response to gravity. So a positive response of that is increases phototropism. A negative response to geotropism is that again anchors the plant, but the plant will get more water for the minerals. Phygmotropism, to touch. So that's the stems or the tendrils. What that will do is to touch, it will hold the plant upright. Why? To increase the rate of photosynthesis. Hydrotropism, to water. A positive response of this is that the roots will absorb more water. Again, I'm emphasizing the word more there. And chemiotropism, response to chemicals. So the roots can have a positive and negative effect, and that is that it can take in minerals or that it can avoid harmful chemicals. Now, apical dominance. For example, IAA. IAA is produced at the meristems, meristematic tissue, root and shoot tips. And what it does, it will diffuse down the plant, and it can inhibit the growth of the side of the plants. Okay. Now, so here you can see in this one, we have apical dominance here. Here is our IAA being produced at the top. And what will happen is that plant will just keep going taller and taller and taller. But if we cut off the top, if we cut off the apical dominance by removing that part of the shoot, what will happen is we allow that IAA to diffuse into the side branches. So the plant might be shorter, but it will have more branching. And what you're doing there is, so by removing the shoot, it will no longer have this inhibition and lateral buds will be able to grow. The plant will be shorter, but it will have more branching. Now, the importance of IAA. So when we're looking at the importance of IAA, what we want to know here is, where is that growth regulator produced? How does that growth regulator move around the plant? Is there a consequence of that movement around the plant? How is the growth affected, and what is the results of this? So IAA is produced in the root or the shoot tips, your meristematic tissue. Unilateral, so here we can see it's being produced. Here's our IAA being produced. Unilateral light from the side, so here we have light from the side, is going to cause more IAA to fuse down the shaded part here. Because of this, so it will diffuse down the shaded part. So IAA will diffuse down the shaded part, the part not in full contact with the sun. So the cells on the shaded side are going to elongate and grow faster. So we can see here they're elongating and growing faster. And that's due to the higher concentration of IAA. Now what this causes is an uneven elongation of the shoot, and it will then bend towards the light. Now, growth inhibitors, they inhibit the growth of plants. An example there, main example really would be ethene. What is ethene? Ethene, it's a gas. Where is it produced? In the stem nodes and decaying leaves, ripened fruits. So its main functions are, so it can be involved in ripening of fruit. So ethene accelerates fruit ripening by stimulating respiration within the fruit. However, when bananas are often picked when they're green, and they're sprayed here with ethene when they need to be sold. Additionally, fruits produce ethene as they ripen. Inhibition of stem growth, so ethene inhibits stem growth, particularly during periods of stress, such as drought. And we have here young leaves can also produce auxin, and auxin prevents leaves from falling. However, as the leaf ages, oxygen production was actually going to slow down, and this can lead then to ethene production. And this often is triggered by longer nights, and what will happen is your leaves are going to be full, and this is what's happening in autumn and right now. So the use of growth regulators in horticulture. We just need to know 2. That's all we need to know. And you don't need to explain them. If you're asked for a growth regulator in horticulture, you can say ripening fruit, rooting powder. You don't need to explain it. I'm going to explain it. So ripening fruit, so bananas are picked green. Ethene is used to stimulate the ripening just before they're going to be sold for distribution. Rooting powder, it contains a synthetic growth regulator, IAA, so it'll stimulate rapid root formation upon cutting. Now, plants can also adapt themselves for protection. So plants, like animals, must be able to protect themselves from an adverse external environment. So these would be their surroundings that are harmful to the organisms. So they have to protect themselves in 4 ways. The way of protection, so how plants adapt for protection, is they want to prevent water loss, they want to prevent overheating, they don't want to be infected by microorganisms, and they don't want to be eaten. So how are these plants adapted to prevent this? Now we need to know these 4 examples. Structurally, okay, plants, so hawthorns have thorns. Why? So that will the effect of this discourage browsing by other animals. Nettles, they have their sharp hairs that sting. What will the effect of this is, it's poisoning. It's a form of forming an acid, and will discourage other animals from eating it. Holly has a thick waxy cuticle, and that's there to prevent water loss. And then a chemical is your heat shock proteins, and they're there to protect the enzymes in high temperatures. We don't want those enzymes from becoming denatured. So the most important adaptation is to generate root shoots and stems and leaves. That's the most important adaptation of plants. Now, if we look here at our mandatory experiment of IAA. So just to remind you, IAA causes elongation or inhibition of the roots. So we use radish seeds. So the first thing you're going to do is safety. Put on your gloves and you're going to put on your lab coat. You're going to make a prepared stock of IAA, a cereal dilution. And how you do that, make a cereal dilution, I add in here, at different concentrations. So you're going to make, that's how you make your cereal, make a cereal dilution at different concentrations if they asked about this. We're using radish seeds. So I would have soaked the radish seeds the day before doing this, and that's to soften the testa. If we soften the testa, it'll allow the enzymes to become activated. So you place 5 radish seeds onto your Petri dish, but on the Petri dish already you have your gridded acetate, and that will help us for measurement. We would then place the filter paper and cotton wool on top of the seeds, and we'll pour on our IAA at different concentrations. So we repeat this. So then what you're going to do is you'll stand the dishes up vertically, and you're going to place them in an incubator for about 3 days at a temperature of 25 degrees, because this is the optimum temperature for enzyme activity. When you're finished, we're going to calculate out the root length using a ruler. A control of this would be a Petri dish with no IAA. At the end of this is your control. It's just got water. Now we have to be able to interpret this graph if asked. So we can see here at low concentrations of IAA, there is an increase in root length. At high concentrations of IAA, there is an increase in shoot length when compared to the control seedlings. We need to know this conclusion.